The farm had no name. Aldrin's father had never given it one, and after his father died, Aldrin saw no reason to change that. You didn't name something you were simply maintaining. You didn't put a title on a thing that was just continuing to exist because stopping was more complicated than going on. It sat at the edge of the Edgewood Forest, not inside it, not properly outside it, but at the margin where the trees thinned to scrub and the scrub gave way to cold, open ground. In spring, the place had a wild, half-untended look to it. By late autumn, when the last leaves had gone from the oaks and the sky came down low and gray each morning, the farm looked the way Aldrin felt, stripped to what was essential, functional, and no more. He was 31 years old. He had learned over the course of 2 years that you could perform a life quite convincingly without actually living one. The animals needed feeding. The fences needed mending. The wood needed splitting, stacking, covering before the first serious frost came. He did these things. He did them well. He had developed a kind of mechanical excellence in the doing of them, a precision that had nothing to do with caring and everything to do with having nothing else to fill the space. His hands stayed busy. His hands knew what to do, even when the rest of him had gone very quiet and still inside, like water that had frozen surface deep. 2 years ago, his wife Maren had died in the middle of August, in the small hours of a night that had been hot and close and smelling of hay. The child had not come away with her. The midwife had stayed until dawn, and Aldrin had sat outside on the step because there was nowhere else to be, and by the time the light came up gray and thin over the eastern fields, both of them were gone. He had thanked the midwife. He'd gone inside. He had done the morning chores because the animals still needed feeding, and the world had continued in that precise, mechanical fashion ever since. There was a cradle in the corner of the bedroom. He had built it himself the previous winter, out of good ash wood. He had sanded it until the grain was smooth as skin. He had carved a simple border around the headboard. Nothing elaborate. Just a repeating pattern of leaves that Maren had asked for, leaves because she liked the way they moved. The cradle stood in the far corner near the window, behind the door when the door was open, which was almost always. He did not look at it directly. He did not remove it. He closed the bedroom door each morning after he rose, and he did not think about why, and on the occasions when he found himself thinking about it anyway, he went and found something with nails in it that needed addressing. The farm worked. He worked. That was enough. He had decided that, and he held to it the way you held to a fence rail in bad weather, not because the fence rail was pleasant to hold, but because the alternative was to let go. The first of the cold came on a Tuesday in late October. He knew it was coming before it arrived. There was a particular quality to the light in the days before the real cold settled. A thinness, a kind of transparency to the air that let you see further than usual and made familiar things look strange and far away. He spent those days splitting wood and stacking it against the east wall of the barn where the overhang would keep it dry, working until the light failed, and then going in and eating whatever was quickest and going to bed. He slept heavily then. He always slept heavily in autumn. The summer's exhaustion hit him all at once when the weather turned, and he went under each night like a stone dropped in still water, and he did not dream, or if he dreamed he did not remember it, which amounted to the same thing. The morning he found her, he woke at his usual hour, just before first light, at the sky outside the window the particular shade of dark blue that precedes gray, and dressed and went out to the barn to start the morning feeding. His breath misted. The ground had a skin of frost on it that crunched faintly under his boots. He pulled the barn door open and went in, and the smell of the animals and the hay came up warm around him, and he took 3 steps toward the feed bins before he saw her. She was lying in the hay to the left of the main stall, half covered by a pile of it that she had drawn over herself in the night. One hand was visible, large, darker skinned than his, the knuckles roughened and scarred. The hand held a knife. Even in sleep, the grip was certain. The knife was old, its handle worn down to bare dark wood, the blade edge bright with recent sharpening. She had come in then and made herself as comfortable as available cover permitted and kept the knife out even sleeping, which told him something about the kind of nights she was used to having. She woke the moment he stopped moving. It happened very fast. One moment she was still, the next she was upright, the hay falling away from her, the knife already positioned in a low guard, her body turned sideways with her weight slightly forward on the front foot. Not threatening. Precisely not threatening. This was the stance of someone who had no interest in initiating anything, who simply refused at a cellular level to be caught without options. She was taller than him by several inches, broad through the shoulders, built with that particular density of muscle that comes not from training for appearance, but from sustained physical work over a long time. Her skin was a deep gray-green in the dimness of the barn. Her lower tusks, 2 of them, slight, not the exaggerated protrusions of old stories, just visible below her upper lip. Her hair was dark, cropped close on the sides, longer on top and currently considerably disheveled from the hay. There was a wound on her right side, visible where her shirt had torn. Someone had bandaged it, or she had bandaged it herself, with strips of cloth that might once have been a sleeve. The bandage had bled through and dried and was stiff now against her ribs. She looked at him. He looked at her. She was waiting for the standard scenario, he realized. She had the expression of someone who had done this before, come to awareness in a strange place, found herself being watched, stood up into a fighting stance, and knew precisely how it tended to go. The shouting or the weapon reached for, or the backing away while calling for others. She was waiting for it. She had her response prepared. Everything about the set of her jaw said, "I've done this before, and I know what comes next, and I'm ready for it." He stood for a moment in the threshold of the barn, looking at her, at the wound, at the way she held herself, not with aggression, but with a patient, tired readiness, at the knife handle worn smooth by a long time in the same hand. "Did you eat?" he said. She did not answer. Not immediately. She stood in the fighting stance and looked at him, and something happened in her face that he could not quite read. Some small disruption, some brief disturbance in the prepared expression, as though the sentence had landed somewhere unexpected and needed a moment to be processed. He waited. "No," she said finally. He nodded. "I'll be back," he said, and went to feed the animals. He did the feeding methodically, working around her without looking at her again, tossing hay into the horse's stall, measuring out the grain, filling the water trough from the bucket he'd brought in. She did not move. He could feel her watching him, but he did not look up, and after a little while, he stopped being aware of the watching and just worked. When he was done, he went back to the house, and he came back 10 minutes later with half a loaf of bread and a piece of hard cheese and some dried meat and the remains of the previous night's soup in a bowl, covered with a cloth to keep in what warmth had survived the trip across the yard. He also brought a clean rag and a jar of the salve he kept for cuts and a length of proper bandaging cloth. He set it all down on the floor of the barn, at a distance that required her to cross the space between them to get to it, but not such a distance that she would have to approach him closely to pick it up. He straightened. "Door's open," he said. "You can leave whenever you want." He turned and went back to the house and started his own breakfast. She did not leave. He did not know that first morning whether she had eaten or not. He did not go back to the barn until the afternoon, and by then the bowl and the cloth were where he'd left them and the food was gone. The old bandage was in a corner of the hay, replaced by the proper cloth he'd brought, wrapped neatly. She had done a competent job of it. The salve jar was back where he'd put it, not quite in the same position, but close. He did the afternoon chores. She was somewhere in the barn, but he did not see her. He went in at dusk, and she was there again, sitting against the wall with her legs drawn up, the knife on her knee. She watched him work. She did not speak. He did not speak to her. He fed the horse, checked the water, checked that everything was latched properly against the night chill, and went back to the house. She was there the next morning. He brought food again, leftover porridge this time, still warm, and more bread. He set it down in the same place without comment. She watched him. He fed the animals. He noticed that the hinge on the small side door, the one that had been sticking for 2 weeks, had been oiled and now moved smoothly. He did not say anything about it. He went about his work. On the third day, he came out earlier than usual. The cold had woken him, a deeper cold than the previous nights, and he wanted to make sure the horse had enough blanket, and found that the morning feeding had already been done. The hay was fresh in the stall, the water topped up, the grain measured out precisely. She was standing near the far wall when he came in, looking at the loft. The animals were noisy, she said, not looking at him. "Right," he said, and went to check the horse. He heard, in the silence that followed, the quality of her stillness. She was waiting for something. He did not know what. He checked the horse's blanket. It was fine. The horse was warm, and he patted the animal's neck once and went to do the 1 or 2 things that remained, and he could feel her still waiting, and he kept his pace even and unhurried, and eventually he left, and she was still standing there. He thought about it later, in the house, eating breakfast alone at the table. He thought about what she had been waiting for. He thought she might have been waiting for him to say something, to acknowledge what she had done, to praise it or question it or push back against it. He thought maybe she was waiting for an invoice to arrive, some announcement of what the gesture had cost her and what she now owed him in return, because that was the world as she had apparently experienced it, where nothing was done without a price attached. He had not given her one. He didn't think he would. Her name came out on the 4th day. He had not asked. He had learned, somewhere in the grey years since Maren died, that questions were a kind of demand, and that some things were offered only when they were ready. He was hanging new wire along the section of fence nearest the barn when she came out into the yard in full daylight for the first time. She had been staying mostly inside the barn when he was around, he had assumed for her own comfort, and walked over to where he was working and watched him for a moment. "You're doing it wrong," she said. He looked at her. He looked at the wire. "The tension on that east post is too high," she said. "You'll get snapback in the first hard frost." He looked at the post. He looked at the wire. She was, he realized after a moment, correct. He adjusted the tension without comment. She watched him do it, and when he was done, she handed him the next length of wire, which she'd picked up from the ground at some point, and they worked along the fence line together for the better part of an hour, him handling the posts and her managing the wire with hands that had clearly done this kind of work before, and when it was done, she stepped back and looked at the length of it. "Sova," she said. He looked at her. "My name." "Aldrin?" he said. She nodded once, the way you acknowledge a thing you have filed and will retain, and walked back toward the barn. The days settled into a shape. She slept in the barn still, though he'd said nothing about that one way or the other, and she was usually awake before him, the morning chores done or half done by the time he came out. He had stopped bringing food to the barn and had started leaving it on the outdoor table near the kitchen door, a covered plate, whatever there was. And it was always gone by the time he came back for it. He did not know when she came for it. He had never seen her take it. He had started making more than he needed for himself, calibrating amounts with a quiet, mechanical precision that he did not examine too closely. She moved around the farm with the kind of efficiency that comes from a lifetime of being somewhere long enough to understand how it works. Not the familiarity of belonging, but the competence of a very good scout who has assessed the terrain and knows where the useful things are. She fixed things. She fixed them without announcement and without asking, and when he noticed them and knew it was her work, the sagging gate rehung, the split handle on the feed shovel replaced with wood she had found in the back of the barn, the chimney throat cleared of the bird's nest that had been making the fire smoke since September. He did not comment, and she did not comment, and they moved around each other in the shared space of the farm like two people who had arrived at the same understanding from opposite directions. She didn't thank him for things. He had noticed that early and found it restful. She didn't say thank you for the food, or the salve, or the roof. She didn't perform gratitude. She accepted things with a kind of level directness that made each acceptance feel less like receiving a gift and more like two parties acknowledging a fact. The food was there. She took it. He provided it. These were things that were true. No ceremony required. He found, somewhere in the second week, that he was talking more than he had in months. Not much. Not speeches. Just small observations as they were working. The soil conditions in the North Field and what he planned for it in spring. The particular difficulty of the east fence in winter, how the posts heaved when the ground froze and thawed, and how he'd tried different methods over the years with varying results. He did not look at her when he talked. She did not look at him. She listened with the quality of attention he'd noticed in her from the start. Not performing attention, just actually present in the conversation, tracking it, filing things away. She responded sometimes with questions. Precise ones. Not small talk, not filler. When she asked something, she wanted the answer. He found that he gave her the answers without thinking very hard about what he was giving away. The knife was always with her. In her hand, on her knee, at her belt. He had stopped noticing it the way you stopped noticing any familiar object that was simply always present. He noticed, though, one afternoon when she was sitting near the outdoor fire they'd built to burn off some brush, that the handle was cracked. Not badly, but there was a split running along the grain of the wood, and in a winter's cold, that would get worse, and eventually the handle would fail entirely. She had the knife in her hand and was looking at it, and her face did the thing it sometimes did. Went very still, not blankly, but with a kind of interior distance, like someone looking at something from a long way away. He did not say anything about it then. That night he found a piece of matching hardwood in his workshop. Not an exact match. Nothing was exactly right, but close in color and grain. And he worked by lamplight for an hour, fitting and shaping and fitting again, And in the morning, before she was up, he took the knife from where she'd left it on the hay bale at the barn door. She had started leaving it there in the mornings, he had noticed, which he thought meant something, though he could not have said precisely what. And he fitted the new handle, sanded it smooth, treated it with the oil he used for his tools, and put it back before she woke. He didn't know when she found it. She never said anything. He came in from the fields a few days later and saw her sitting on the step with a knife on her knee, turning it in her hand slowly, and her face was the interior distance one again, but quieter this time. Quieter in a way that was not sad. He walked past and went inside and started dinner, and neither of them said anything about it then or afterward. The laugh happened on a Wednesday in the 3rd week. He had been trying to fix the co-op latch, which had a mechanism that was old and cantankerous, and had been defeating him on and off for 2 years, and he had been at it for 20 minutes with incremental, useless adjustments, talking to the latch in the way you talk to inanimate objects when you had been alone long enough that the habit had returned, a low-running commentary of observations about the latch's ancestry and its probable motivation and the general injustice of things that were designed to be simple, being obstructively complicated. He had been dimly aware that she was standing a short distance away, watching, as she sometimes did when he was doing something she had not seen him do before. He made one final adjustment with some confidence, and the latch snapped shut with great authority and immediately fell off entirely and landed in the mud. And she laughed. It was small. It was barely audible. It was the kind of laugh that escapes before the person producing it can catch it. A brief exhalation of actual amusement that made it out past the defenses before they registered the attack. She cut it off immediately. He kept his eyes on the latch in the mud and did not look at her and did not react, and after a moment he picked up the latch and started looking at where it had been attached, and she moved off to see to something else. He thought about that small sound for the rest of the afternoon. He thought about it with a warmth he hadn't expected, a warmth that surprised him because he had become somewhat used to not feeling warmth, had come to experience its absence as simply the normal temperature of things, and the arrival of it was slightly startling, like unexpected light. He thought, I made her laugh, not deliberately, not performing for it, just it had happened. And it had been real, and he had had the sense in that moment of seeing something she did not usually let out into the open air, and he had had the much stronger sense that she was watching to see what he would do with it. He had done nothing with it, and that, he suspected, was the right answer. The first frost came properly on the last day of October. He woke to a world that had gone sight and hard-edged overnight. The sky above it so clear and cold it looked like glass, and he could see his breath hanging in the air as he stood in the doorway of the house and looked out at it. He felt the farm's particular winter stillness, the way the cold contracted everything down to what was strictly necessary, and he stood there for a moment before going in for his coat and going out to start the day. She was already up. He could see her at the far end of the yard, cutting firewood with the splitting maul in a way that suggested she had been doing it for some time and would be doing it for some time more. She worked with a steady rhythm, setting each log with a twist that found the grain and splitting cleanly, and the sound of it came to him across the white frozen yard, clean and regular as a clock. He went to help her. They worked on opposite sides of the woodpile, her splitting and him stacking, and after a while, he fell into her rhythm rather than establishing his own, and they worked like that through the morning without speaking, and it was comfortable in a way he had not experienced comfort in a long time. Not warm comfort. It was too cold for warm comfort. But something solid and sufficient, like standing inside good walls. They had the night conversation in the first week of November. It had been a long day. He had been repairing the roof of the barn, a section that had started to lift at the corner where the northwest winds came hardest. And she had been up there with him, holding things in position while he worked, and they had been at it until the light failed and they had come down stiff-fingered and tired. He had made soup. She had sat at the table by the fire in the way she sometimes did now. Not always, and not comfortably exactly, but without the hair-trigger readiness she had had in the first days. And they had eaten, and after eating he had not immediately gone up to sleep, and she had not gone back to the barn, and the fire had burned down until it was just coals, and the room had settled into the kind of silence that is not empty. She spoke first. "What do you do?" she said, and her voice was thoughtful, not addressing him exactly, but in the direction of the fire. "When the place you called home stops being that?" He did not answer immediately. It was not a question with a quick answer. "Nothing," he said after a moment. "For a while." She was quiet. "And then," she said. "And then you do the next thing, and the next, and after enough next things, you find out whether you're building towards something or just passing time." She turned the knife in her hand. She always had it when she was still, he had noticed, the way other people might hold a cup or worry a piece of cloth. "And which is it?" she said. "For you." He looked at the coals. "I'm still finding out," he said. She nodded once, that filing away nod. "Is there a difference," she said, "between leaving and losing?" He thought about this for a while. "Leaving is something you do," he said. "Losing is something that happens to you. But I think, in the end, you can't always feel the difference from inside it." She was quiet again. "I left a place," she said, "but I didn't choose to leave it, so I don't know what to call it." He waited. "The clan I served," she said, not looking at him. "I did work for them that they didn't want on record. Missions, information gathering. I went where they sent me and I found what they needed, and I never asked what it was for. Until I found something they would rather I hadn't found." He didn't ask what it was. He waited. "I didn't betray anyone," she said. "I didn't take the information anywhere, or use it, or tell it to anyone. I simply knew it, and knowing it was enough to make me a problem." "So," she stopped. "They sent hunters." The fire crackled once. "They called me a traitor," she said, "which is a useful word for a person you want gone. It doesn't require proof. Just enough people who agree not to ask questions." "How long have you been running?" 4 months. She turned the knife again. "The wound was from the second time they caught up with me. Not caught exactly. Intercepted. I got away, but it cost something." He looked at her. The bandage under her shirt was healing now. He could see in the way she moved that it had stopped limiting her range 2 weeks ago, though she still favored it slightly in cold weather. "You didn't have to tell me that," he said. "No," she said. "I know." She stood up then and picked up her coat from the back of the chair. "Where I come from," she said at the door, not quite looking back at him. "Home is not a place. It is a choice, a word. Veithra." She said it in her own language, a softer word than her language usually produced, with a catch in the middle like a held breath. "To stay not because there is nowhere else to go, but because you have chosen this place as yours." She paused. "I am telling you this because I have not said it to anyone in some time, and because I think you will understand it, and because I am trying to learn to say things that are true when they come." He sat with that for a moment. "Thank you," he said. She nodded and went out. He sat by the coals for a while afterward, not thinking very hard, just sitting with the warmth and the quiet and the small weight of what had been said and not said. And after a while, he went up to bed and he slept easily, which he had not done, he realized, in quite some time. The neighbor came on a Thursday. His name was Con, and he had known Aldrin since they were boys, and he was a decent man in the way that some people are decent, consistently, without drama, without needing to be celebrated for it. He came to return a borrowed rake and to see about the fallen tree on the boundary of their two properties, and he came around the side of the barn at the worst possible moment, which was the moment when Sova was in the yard splitting wood. Con stopped. Sova did not stop. She set another log and split it without looking at him, and then she picked up the pieces and went inside the barn to stack them, and Con stood where he was until she was out of sight, and then walked over to Aldrin with his face set in a particular expression, not hostility, not cruelty, but something Aldrin recognized as genuine worry wearing the shape of wariness. "She been here long?" Con said. "A few weeks," Aldrin said. Con set the rake down against the fence and looked at his hands. "You know what people will say," he said. "Not unkindly, not as a threat. Just, you know this, and I am saying it out loud because that is what a friend does when you are not saying it to yourself." "People will say in any case," Aldrin said. Con looked at him. "She hurt?" "She was when she got here," Aldrin said. "She running from something?" "Probably yes." Con nodded. He picked the rake back up and looked at the tree at the property line and set it down again. He was a man who thought carefully before he spoke, which Aldrin had always appreciated about him, and he was thinking now, and Aldrin let him. "You know your business," Con said at last. "Yes," Aldrin said. Con picked up the rake again and held it out, and Aldrin took it. "Tree's going to need dealing with before it takes out your west fence section," Con said. "Maybe next week if the weather holds." "I'll bring the two-man saw," Aldrin said. Con nodded and walked back the way he'd come. At the top of the field path, he turned back briefly. "The Harlan boys were in the tavern Saturday," he said, talking about an orc woman they'd heard of somewhere in the district. Aldrin held the rake. "I wasn't in the tavern Saturday," he said. Con looked at him for another moment, and then continued on up the path. Aldrin stood in the yard after he'd gone, turning the rake in his hands. The first hunters came 3 days after that. He was at the east fence when he saw them coming up the track, two figures walking with the unhurried pace of people following a direction they had been given. Orcs, both of them, road-worn. He set down his tools and went to meet them at the gate. They were polite. They gave a clan name and explained they were looking for a woman, an orc, traveling alone, possibly injured. They had reason to believe she had come through the district. "Do you have documentation?" Aldrin said. A brief pause. "We're not at that stage yet," the first one said. "This is preliminary." "Then I can't help you," Aldrin said. "Without a formal document, I have no way of knowing whether you have standing to ask me anything. If you have a clan warrant or a district notice, bring it back and I'll look at it. Until then, anyone working on this farm is working on this farm." The second hunter watched him steadily throughout this. Neither of them pushed. "We'll note that you've been informed," the first one said. "Note whatever you like," Aldrin said. They left the way they'd come. He went back to the fence and kept working. He did not look at the barn. He heard sometime later the quiet sound of the barn door moving. She had been still inside it the whole time, and she had heard everything, and she had chosen not to come out. He kept working. They came back the following week. He had been watching for them since. Not anxiously, not constantly, but with the low-level alertness that had become a background feature of the farm since the first night, an awareness of the road and the tree line and whatever was coming from the direction of the outside world toward the small bounded space of his land. He was splitting wood when he saw them. 2 orcs coming up the track from the main road, walking with a kind of deliberate, unhurried certainty that spoke of authority. Not their own authority exactly, but the authority of having been sent. They were tall and well-built, both of them, in traveling clothes that were functional and showed evidence of long use. Both armed. Not ostentatiously, not with weapons drawn or visible in an obvious way, but with the quality of being armed that you recognized once you'd learned to look for it. The knives at their belts, the way their hands stayed free. He heard the barn door go quiet. She had been moving inside it a moment ago, and now she was still. He set down his axe and waited. They approached and stopped at a reasonable distance, and the one on the left spoke in the common tongue with an accent he placed as coming from the northern clans, the dialect a little clipped and formal. "Good morning," the hunter said. "We're looking for someone." "Most people who come down this track are looking for something," Aldrin said. "A woman, orc, about so high." The hunter indicated with one hand. "Going by the name Sova, or possibly others, she's wanted for questioning in connection with some matters from her previous employment." "Wanted for questioning," Aldrin said. "That's correct." He looked at them both, evenly. "By whom?" he said. A very brief pause. The kind of pause that was not long enough to be suspicious if you weren't watching for it, but he was watching. "The Redwood Clan Council," the hunter said. "She was in their service. She left without authorization, and there are matters." "Did the full council authorize this search?" Aldrin said. Another pause. "The relevant authorities." "I'm asking specifically," Aldrin said pleasantly. "Whether it was a full council vote or a decision by a subset of that council, because my understanding of Redwood Clan procedure is that pursuit actions require a majority vote of the full council to be given formal standing. And if this isn't a formally authorized pursuit action, then what you're describing as a private party looking for a private individual, which I believe is a different matter entirely." The hunter looked at him. "You know our procedures," the hunter said. "I know a number of things," Aldrin said. "I've lived near the forest boundary most of my life. I've traded with 2 different clans, and I've had occasion to learn how they operate." The second hunter was watching him with an expression that was harder to read than his companions. "Assessing. If she is on your property," the first hunter said, "you understand there could be complications. For you, if you're found to be harboring a fugitive." "She's not a fugitive," Aldrin said. "You just told me she's wanted for questioning." "Questioning is not the same as a formal charge, and without a formal charge, she's a private individual, and a private individual has the right to go where she chooses and to work where she's offered work, and she's been offered work here. She splits firewood." He paused. "Tell me specifically how she's a threat." The barn was very quiet behind him. "Our business is with her," the first hunter said. "Not with you." "Then you have a problem," Aldrin said, "because she's not here. I haven't seen any woman of that description. I've been here alone for 2 years, and I don't have visitors. If you check with anyone in the village, they'll tell you the same, because it's been true up until recently. And people who've lived near you in the district and known your business for years are likely to tell what they know to be true." It was not quite a lie. It was a statement of extended recent truth offered in a context designed to suggest a present truth that was also, technically, in that moment as they spoke, somewhat true. She was in the barn, not in the yard, and he had not precisely seen her that morning. He held it together with the calm of a man who had nothing to hide, which was easier because he had decided some time ago that he did not have anything to hide, and that if he had to choose between hiding something and standing in front of it, then he would stand. The two hunters looked at him for a while. The second one spoke for the first time. "If you've given shelter to someone under clan pursuit," he said slowly, "the clan takes note." "The clan is welcome to take note," Aldrin said. "The clan is also welcome to return with properly authorized documentation, and if at that time there's a formally charged individual on my property, I'll cooperate fully with the legitimate process. Until then," he picked up his axe, "I've got work to finish." They stood where they were for another moment, and then the first hunter said something in the clan dialect, brief, clipped, the tone of logging something for the record, and they turned and went back down the track. Aldrin did not watch them go. He set a log and split it, set another, split it. His hands knew this work, and they did it while the rest of him ran very quietly over what he'd done and why and whether it was as solid as it had felt in the moment, and he decided it was solid, or at least that it was what he would do again, which came to approximately the same thing. After a while, he heard the barn door move. He did not turn around. "You heard?" he said. "Yes," she said from behind him. He split another log. "I could have handled it," she said. Her voice was level, but there was something underneath it, some contained quality, like a wire drawn tight. "I know," he said. "You chose not to." A pause. "You noticed that," she said. "You let me try first," he said. "That's not nothing." She was quiet. He could feel her standing there, that particular charged stillness. "You know what you did just now," she said. "If they come back with papers, then I'll deal with papers," he said. "That's a different day." "They will come back," she said. "Maybe." "They will," she said. "They always do." He set the axe down and turned to look at her. She was standing in the barn doorway, the knife in her hand, and she was looking at him with an expression he hadn't seen on her face before. It was not gratitude. He had noticed she did not do gratitude in that performative way. She did not soften or spill over into visible emotion. But there was something in her face that was careful and intent, like a person reading something important and wanting to get every word right. "Why?" she said, not accusing, genuinely asking. He looked at her for a moment. "Because you weren't here 3 years ago," he said, "and now you are. And because the first morning I walked into that barn, I asked you one question, and you told me the truth, and you've been telling me the truth ever since, and that's worth something. It's worth more than something." He picked the axe up again. "That's why." She stood in the doorway for a moment longer. Then she said, in the quietest voice she had used in all the weeks she had been here, "Orath." He looked at her. "What does it mean?" he said. She was quiet for a moment, looking for the right shape in the common tongue. "To stand in front," she said. "To put yourself between someone and what would harm them, when you're not required to." She paused. "When you choose." He held that word. "Orath," he said. She almost smiled. "Close enough," she said. She went back into the barn. He stood in the yard for a moment with the axe in his hands. The cold air moved around him, and somewhere in the edgewood a bird called once and went quiet, and he felt something, not happiness exactly. not the uncomplicated warmth of happiness which belonged to a different version of his life. Something more like standing on ground that is solid after a long time on uncertain footing. Something like being where you are, in the specific moment you are in, and finding that you are, against expectation, not entirely opposed to being there. He went back to splitting wood. They did not speak of the hunters that evening. They ate dinner, and the fire burned down, and she sat at the table longer than usual, and at some point he said, "The fence on the north boundary needs work before a serious freeze." And she said, "I saw. The post at the corner has heaved." And they discussed the post at the corner in a practical way for a few minutes, and then she went back to the barn, and he went up to bed. He lay in the dark and listened to the wind beginning to pick up in the trees and thought about what she had said. Vethara. To stay, not because there was nowhere to go, but because you had chosen the place as yours. He thought about how long it had been since he had thought of this farm as a choice rather than a default. He thought about the cradle behind the closed door and the empty chair that Maren had sat in, and the way the kitchen had gotten smaller and smaller over 2 years, until it was just the right size for one person working mechanically through the motions of a life. He thought about how, in the last 3 weeks, it had gotten slightly bigger again. He thought about this for a while, and then he stopped thinking and went to sleep, and he did not know what she was doing or thinking out there in the barn. But he thought she was probably lying in the hay with the knife in her hand and the new handle smooth under her palm, and he thought that was all right. They had 3 weeks of what he thought of afterward as the quiet weeks. 3 weeks in which the farm settled into its winter shape, and they settled into the winter shape of the farm, and the days were short and cold and very full of work, and the evenings were long and quiet and almost easy. She had moved from the barn to the house at some point in the 2nd week. He had not asked her. She had not asked him. He had simply found one evening that there were 2 cups of tea on the table and that she was sitting across from him at the fire, and nothing had been said about it, and she was there the next evening too. She slept on the bench by the kitchen fire with her coat as a blanket and the knife within reach, and in the mornings she was up before him, and the house had, he could not find a better word for it, presence. In a way it had not had in 2 years, a sense of being inhabited rather than merely occupied. He told her about Maren on the 17th day of November, near midnight, with snow beginning outside the window. He had not planned to. He had not been working up to it. He had been trying to find words for the difficulty of the north boundary, and had been unable to, and in the process of trying, he had said something about how the field had looked the summer Maren died, how it had been the best summer he could remember, hot and dry and good for the grain, and once that was out, the rest had come, slowly, without ceremony, the way she had laughed, the way she had believed about everything and everyone that most things would turn out better than expected, which had not been his natural disposition and which had been useful to him for the years they had been together. The way she had asked him to carve leaves on the cradle headboard. Sova listened. She did not make it easier or harder. She did not offer comfort in the performed way, the touching of hands, the murmured expressions of sympathy that he had gotten a great deal of in the weeks after, which had landed on him like objects thrown at a wall, not wounding exactly, but uselessly glancing off. She listened and was present and said at the end, after a quiet, "The things that go first are the sounds, their voice, the particular way they breathed." A pause. "I had a close friend, in the clan, before." Another pause. "He died on a mission. He was 24. What I miss is not the large things. It is his habit of clicking his tongue when he was working through a problem. I would give a great deal to hear that. He was quiet. Yes, he said. You don't stop missing, she said. I've been told you do. I don't believe it. You learn to carry it differently, he said. She turned the knife in her hands. Maybe, she said. The snow outside the window was getting heavier now. Vithara, he said, trying the word again, feeling the shape of it. She looked at him. You said home is a choice, he said, not a place. Yes, she said. Then losing a home, he said, is losing a choice, not a location. She held his gaze. Yes, she said, very quietly. He looked at the fire. I think, he said slowly, that I lost the choice. When she died, I stopped choosing this place. I just stayed because there was nowhere else to be and because stopping was harder than going on. He paused. That's not Vithara, by your definition. No, she agreed, but I think, he said, it might be becoming something else. She said nothing, but she did not look away. And in the silence between them there was something that was not quite acknowledgement and not quite agreement, but something closer to both than he had come in a long time. She left on the last day of November. They came back, the hunters. They came back in the morning with 2 more men and a piece of paper that had official-looking marks on it. And the paper named her and named the clan, and gave her the status of a formally charged fugitive under clan law. And clan law had a long reach and complicated entanglements with the district authorities, and the paper was, he had to admit when he looked at it, technically legitimate. The hunt was legitimate. The charge, treason, the word he had feared since she told him her story, was on the paper in precise, careful letters. He stood in the doorway of the house and looked at the paper and thought about the full council authorization he had asked about before, and the hunter told him with patient precision that the vote had taken place 8 days ago and the authorization was in order, and Aldrin thought about the time he had bought and whether he had bought enough, and decided he had bought what there was to buy. He went to the barn. She was there, which meant she had heard them arrive and had made no move to go, which meant she intended to handle it herself, and when he came in, she turned to look at him with an expression that was entirely level and entirely braced. I know, she said. You heard, he said. Yes. He stood for a moment. They have a legitimate paper, he said. I know. If you stay, I know what happens if I stay, she said. I know what happens to you if you try to keep me here against a legal order. He thought about what he wanted to say and could not find the right shape for it. I'm not asking you to stay against the paper, he said finally. I'm asking you. I want you to know that I'm not asking you to go. She looked at him for a long time. Those are different things, she said. Yes, he said. They are. She picked up her knife and her coat and her small pack. She stood with them. I have to deal with this, she said. The charge. I have to go deal with it where it lives, which is not here. I cannot fight a legal paper from a barn in someone else's field. I know, he said. If I run from it, they can chase me forever. She put the pack on. I need to stop running. He looked at her. How long? He said. She shook her head slightly. I don't know. Weeks. Maybe longer. She looked around the barn in a brief, efficient way, the way you look at a place you're leaving and want to be able to reconstruct later. The south fence will need work before January. The way the ground freezes on that slope, the posts will move. I know, he said. The horse favors the left foreleg in very cold weather. You'll need to watch that. I'll watch it. She stood in the barn door. "Aldrin," she said. He waited, but she didn't finish whatever she'd been about to say. Instead, she turned back, and she put the knife down on the fence post nearest the door, carefully, precisely, point first in the wood, handle up, and she walked out, and he heard her footsteps cross the yard, and then he heard voices, brief and formal, and then silence. He stood in the barn for a long time. Then he went and did the morning chores. He found the knife the next morning. He had known it was there, of course. He had watched her put it there, and still the sight of it in the early light stopped him in the doorway for a moment. The old handle, the blade edge bright against the wood of the post. The new handle he had fitted. He stood looking at it for a moment, and then he went on and fed the animals. He worked all day. It was a hard day, cold and with a wind off the north that cut through everything, and the south fence line that she had mentioned that was worse than he'd expected. 2 of the posts already heaving out of alignment, and he worked at it from mid-morning to the light failing, alone, his hands numb in his gloves, and when it was done he went back to the house and ate without tasting what he was eating and sat by the fire for a while. The house had gone small again. Not as small as before, but noticeably smaller. The absence of another person in a space that had briefly held 2 was different from the absence of a person who had never been there, and he was finding that out in real time, sitting in his chair by the fire, with his tea going cold in his hands. He thought about the charge. He thought about clan law, and the reach of it, and the distance between treason as a political accusation and treason as a fact. He thought about what she had said. "I didn't betray anyone. I simply knew too much." He thought about the quality of her honesty, which he had been measuring for 2 months now, not systematically but with the accumulated evidence of days, and he thought, "I believe her." He thought about her going back to deal with it where it lived. He thought about the knife in the post. He went upstairs and stood in the doorway of the bedroom and looked at the cradle in the corner. He looked at it for a while, in the way he hadn't let himself in 2 years, really looked at it, at the ash wood and the carved leaf border. He looked at it and he felt the weight of it, and he let himself feel the weight of it, which was different from closing the door, and after a while he went back downstairs. In the morning he saddled the horse. He came back in the early evening of the second day, and she was with him. She was on foot, and he was on horseback, and she was walking with the contained, efficient stride of a person who had been walking a long time. And when they came up the track to the farm, he saw the light was on in the kitchen, and he had not left a light on, and then he saw Con standing by the road. Con looked at them both. He looked at Sova with a long, careful look, and she looked back at him with the level patience of someone who had been looked at in many ways, and this particular one didn't alarm her. Then Con looked at Aldrin. "Fence on the south field got knocked down," Con said. "Wind, probably. The corner post." He paused. "If you get around to it." Aldrin looked at him. "I'll get around to it," he said. Con nodded once, turned, and walked away up the road. Sova watched him go. "He knew," she said. "He knew," Aldrin said. She was quiet for a moment. "Things are not resolved," she said. "The council there's a process. It will take time. I can't promise there won't be more difficulty." "I know," he said. "And if I'm here, I know." She looked at the farm, the house with a light on in the kitchen, the barn, the fence lines, the edge of the edgewood behind it all, dark and enormous and indifferent. He got down from the horse. "You came here wounded and alone," he said, "and never once asked for help. Everything you did was give me a reason not to ask you to leave." He held the horse's reins and looked at her directly, I'm not asking you to leave." She stood very still. He waited. "Bethara," she said very quietly. The word in her own language, the word for staying, not because you have to, but because you have chosen. "Bethara," he said. She looked at him for a long time, and then she went ahead of him into the yard. He stabled the horse. When he came into the kitchen, she was at the stove. He did not know how she had gotten the fire going so quickly, but the kitchen was already warming, and there was something in the pot. She had her coat off and her sleeves pushed up, and she was stirring without looking up at him, and on the table he saw the knife. She had put the knife on the table, not in the post, not on the windowsill, not in her belt where it usually lived. On the table, in the middle of the table, the handle toward him. He hung up his coat and his hat. He sat down at the table and looked at the knife for a moment, at the new handle and the old blade, at the care visible in the fitting of the two things together. Then he pushed it gently to the middle of the table again and folded his hands. She put a bowl in front of him and sat down across from him with her own. They ate. It was quiet in the kitchen. The fire made its sounds, the pot made its sounds, the wind outside moved through the leafless trees at the edge of the wood. He could see the snow beginning to fall outside the window, just the first light flakes catching the kitchen light, and the fields were going white again, and the farm sat in the darkness at the edge of the forest, and held them both, and the two cups on the table held their warmth, and nothing had been resolved, and everything would require work, and the world outside was still what it was, and inside the kitchen it was enough. In the morning, she came down while it was still dark, and he had already made the tea. 2 cups, one of them in front of her chair before she sat down. The bedroom door stood open at the top of the stairs. She sat down. He sat down. She picked up her cup. He picked up his. "I brought the knife back," she said. He looked at her. "I saw," he said. She held her cup. "That's all," she said. He looked at his cup, and then at her, and then at the window where the snow had been falling all night and was still falling, covering the fields, covering the fence lines, covering the ground she had walked across for the first time on an early cold morning with a wound in her side and a knife in her hand. The farm at the edge of the world, the place that was nobody's home and was becoming, one quiet day at a time, something else entirely. "I know," he said, and the snow kept falling, and the fire kept burning, and outside the barn was warm, and the horse was fed, and the fence on the north boundary had been repaired, and the south fence would need work, and there was wood enough stacked for the winter if nothing went badly wrong. And neither of them said anything more, and the kitchen held them both in its warmth, and the morning came on slowly outside the window, grey and white and very still, and that was enough. That was enough. That's the end of the story, and I'm grateful you're still here. If this one gave you something, drop it in the comments. I want to know which moment hit you. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe and leave a like. It helps more than you think.